You ever wake up on a Saturday morning expecting peace, only to realize life has other plans? That's how my story began. I thought I'd enjoy coffee, the sound of sprinklers, maybe the distant chatter of birds. But instead, I heard something I'll never forget. A sharp electrical snap, followed by a scream so shrill it could have cracked glass. I rushed out to my porch, mug still in hand, heart pounding, and there she was, Karen, our self-appointed HOA president, the queen of rules, fines, and unsolicited advice. And right then, she was sitting half-fallen out of her little white golf cart, clutching the steering wheel like she'd just wrestled a thunderbolt. Smoke curled from the cheap wire cutters dangling in her hand. Her face was frozen somewhere between shock and rage. She had tried to cut my new electric line, the one I'd installed to keep stray animals out. It wasn't lethal, just a low-voltage deterrent, but when mixed with her metal golf cart frame and stubborn attitude, well, physics had written a comedy show I hadn't paid to see. I should have run to her, maybe asked if she was all right. That's what a decent neighbor might have done. But I didn't. I just stood there on my porch, sipping coffee, watching her flail like one of those inflatable tube men you see outside car dealerships. Because here's the thing. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't bad luck. This was the fourth time that month Karen had stepped onto my property without permission. And this time, Karma showed up carrying an extension cord. The whole mess had started 6 weeks earlier. I'd replaced my old wooden fence with a sleek new one, modern metal panels, sturdy, clean. My house backed onto a narrow strip of green space the HOA maintained. Nothing special. A few trees, some grass mainly used by dog walkers. I paid for everything myself. Permits approved, city inspector signed off. Everything was legal. But apparently, legality doesn't matter when you've got a Karen running the show. She stormed up to me the first day it went up, clipboard in hand, saying, "This fence is too industrial looking. It ruins the neighborhood's aesthetic." Her exact words. At first I thought she was joking, but then the little notes started showing up, tucked under my doormat, written in her perfect cursive. Stuff like, "Your gate reflects poorly on community values. Please consider a warmer material." One time she even taped a paint sample card to my door. Dessert taupe elegance. When I ignored her, she escalated. I caught her sneaking into my backyard with a tape measure one morning. She claimed she had oversight authority as HOA president. Oversight? She was the HOA. Everyone else on the board had quit, tired of her drama. That was the first time I started keeping records. Notes, photos, even videos. Because I knew, deep down, that someone like Karen wasn't going to stop at paint samples. And I was right. When I added the electric deterrent wire, I thought that'd be the end of it. It was harmless, hidden on the inside of the fence, perfectly legal. A single solar unit, the kind farmers use to keep raccoons out of their gardens. But Karen didn't see a harmless fence. No, she saw a military-grade death trap threatening her kingdom. One evening, she showed up pounding on my door. "Unauthorized electrical installations are strictly prohibited," she shouted, shoving a highlighted HOA pamphlet in my face. "Karen," I said, calm as I could. "The HOA doesn't regulate inside fences. This is my property. The city already approved it." Her eyes went wide like I'd just told her gravity didn't exist. "That's not the point," she snapped. "It looks aggressive. It sends the wrong message." "Good," I said, and closed the door. I knew right then she'd try something. I didn't expect it so soon, so when I stood there on that Saturday morning, watching her twitch from a harmless jolt she brought on herself, I couldn't even feel sorry. She glared at me, face pale, voice shaking. You electrified the fence. You could have killed me." "It's low voltage," I said, sipping my coffee. "Same as a cattle fence." "You're fine. This is assault," she shouted, waving her finger like she was about to curse me. "I'm calling the police." I smiled. "Go ahead. Just don't forget to mention the part where you trespassed onto my property with wire cutters. Oh, and maybe mention the 3 bright yellow signs that say, 'Caution, low voltage wire.'" Her eyes darted to the signs, posted clearly every few feet. She stammered, Those aren't legal." "They're from Home Depot, Karen," I said. Pretty sure they're as legal as mulch." She climbed shakily back into her golf cart, her face burning red with humiliation, and as she sped off, shouting, "This isn't over." Over her shoulder, I knew she meant it. But what I didn't know then was that this was only the beginning, because Karen wasn't the kind of neighbor who backed down. She was the kind who turned petty disagreements into wars, and the war had just started. If you've ever dealt with a neighbor who can't mind their own business, you'll know exactly what came next. Because Karen, she didn't lick her wounds and move on. No, she reloaded. The very same evening after her little electric shock adventure, my phone pinged with a community-wide email blast. Subject line in all caps. Dangerous installation. Urgent HOA alert. She had attached zoomed-in photos of my fence, cropped to make it look like barbed wire from a prison yard. Her email claimed my setup was a serious threat to children, pets, and neighborhood harmony. Within an hour, I had 3 phone calls. One from a curious neighbor, one from a nervous one, and one from Mrs. Bennett next door, who laughed so hard she wheezed. "Sweetheart," she said between chuckles, "can I borrow your fence to keep raccoons out of my garden?" That laugh helped, but I wasn't stupid. I knew how HOA politics worked. Rumors spread faster than truth, and Karen was an expert at twisting words. The following days, she doubled down. Every time her golf cart rolled past my house, she slowed down, pretending to check the curbs while snapping photos of my fence from every possible angle. One morning, I caught her crouched near the corner post, tape measure in hand, muttering to herself. I walked over. "You know that's trespassing, right?" I said. She looked up, straight-faced. "As HOA president, I have authority to inspect for compliance." "You're not inspecting. You're snooping. This is my duty to protect community standards." I laughed. "You're the only one left on the board, Karen. The vice president quit last month after you fined him for leaving his trash bins out 3 hours late." She glared, cheeks flushing but didn't move. That's when I realized something important. She truly believed she was in charge, that every bush, fence, and mailbox belonged to her kingdom. So I started documenting everything. Every note, every email, every photo of her trespassing. If Karen wanted a war, I was going to keep receipts. It didn't take long for the real showdown to arrive. The HOA board, or what was left of it, announced a meeting. Word spread quickly, and by Tuesday night the clubhouse was packed. Cheap folding chairs, bad coffee, and neighbors buzzing with gossip. I sat in the front row, waiting. Karen stood at the podium like she was defending humanity at a trial in The Hague. She'd even brought props, big foam boards with blown-up photos of my fence circled in red marker. "This homeowner," she said, pointing dramatically at me, "has installed a hazardous electrical barrier that endangers our community. I demand immediate removal, daily fines, and disciplinary action." A few neighbors shifted uncomfortably. Some even nodded. For a moment, I wondered if she might actually win. Then one of the board members, Phil, a quiet guy who clearly regretted ever volunteering, cleared his throat. "Maybe we should let him respond first." Karen's jaw tightened, but she nodded. "Fine." Briefly. I stood, slow and calm, letting the chair scrape just enough to make her flinch. I placed a folder on the table and turned to the room. "These," I said, holding up photos, "are time-stamped shots from my security cameras. That's Karen, on my property, with wire cutters attempting to damage my fence. The same fence the city inspector signed off on." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Karen's face turned crimson, and according to the HOA Charter, Section 322, unauthorized interference with private property is a violation. Gasps. Murmurs. Even Mrs. Dalton, one of the elderly board members, piped up, "If that's true, dear, then he hasn't broken the rules." "You have." For the first time, Karen looked cornered. Her lips trembled, eyes darting around the room, but nobody spoke up to save her. That's when I knew. I had won that night's battle. But deep down, I also knew this wasn't over. Karen wasn't wired to quit, and I was right, because what she did next made everything worse. I thought the HOA meeting fiasco would have been enough to humble her. You'd think getting called out in front of the entire neighborhood, proof and all, would make someone back off. But Karen, she wasn't wired that way. If anything, losing face only made her more dangerous. It started with the little things. Her golf cart parked suspiciously close to my driveway at night. Trash mysteriously scattered across my lawn. Spray paint scrawled across my mailbox one morning. Shock jock. I cleaned it off, but I didn't have to guess who'd done it. Nobody else had the time, or the pettiness. Then came the night I heard it for myself. I'd gone to bed around 11. The house was quiet, windows cracked open to let in the cool night air. The moon was shining silver over the lake behind my fence. Peaceful, almost too peaceful. Then I heard it, a faint metallic clink. At first, I thought it was a raccoon knocking something over, but then I heard it again, sharper this time, followed by the high-pitched whine of a drill. My stomach dropped. No raccoon carried a cordless drill. I grabbed my phone, pulled up the security feed, and there she was, clear as day in the night vision glow. Karen, crouched by the solar unit that powered my fence, dressed in a reflective jogging jacket, like she thought safety gear made trespassing legal. In her hands, insulated pliers and a screwdriver. Unbelievable, I muttered, hitting record on my phone. I slipped on my boots and went outside, my pulse thundering in my ears. By the time I rounded the path, she was still fiddling with the connection box, muttering curses under her breath. Sparks jumped as her pliers slipped. She yelped and shook her hand, hissing through her teeth, but she went right back at it. I waited until I was only a few feet away before speaking. "Careful," I said, my voice low but steady. "That's the live wire you're holding," she shrieked, dropping the tool and spun around. Her eyes went wide when she saw me standing there. "What are you doing out here?" she snapped. I gestured at the sign right behind her. "No trespassing." "The better question is, what are you doing out here?" Her shoulders straightened as if she could bluff her way through. "I'm conducting an emergency safety inspection on behalf of the HOA." At midnight, I raised an eyebrow. "Electrical hazards don't keep business hours," she said, voice trembling but defiant. I couldn't help but laugh. "Karen, you're standing on wet grass in the dark, cutting wires that don't belong to you. The only hazard out here is you." Her mouth opened, then closed again. I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. "I'm calling the sheriff. You've broken into my property, tampered with electrical systems, and ignored warning signs. That's 3 strikes." Her eyes widened, panic flickering across her face. "You wouldn't dare." "Oh, I'd dare," I said. "And I'd love to see how you explain those tools." For a second, I thought she might run. But instead, she tried a different tactic. Her voice cracked, desperate. "You're harassing me. You've been filming me for weeks. I'm the victim here." I chuckled, shaking my head. "Karen, you keep walking into places you don't belong. I don't have to make you look crazy. You're doing a fine job on your own." She snatched up her jacket, threw it at one of my cameras, and stormed back to her golf cart muttering, "You'll regret this." As her taillights disappeared into the night, I stood in the yard, heart still racing. I wasn't even angry anymore, just tired, because I realized then, Karen wasn't going to stop. She'd keep coming back. And next time, it was going to be worse. After that midnight showdown, I thought maybe she'd finally give up. Surely, being caught with pliers in hand, standing in my yard at midnight would have been humiliating enough. But if there's one thing I learned about Karen, it's this: humiliation doesn't stop her. It fuels her. The very next morning, the entire neighborhood inbox exploded. Subject line: Emergency Community Safety Alert. Dangerous. Neighbor. Guess who wrote it? She claimed. I'd weaponized electrical systems to terrorize innocent residents. She attached blurry screenshots from God knows where, claiming they were my fence sparking like a death trap. She even called me a hostile individual creating psychological distress, and people believed her. At least some did. That's the danger of an HOA community. Rumors spread faster than truth. Fear travels quicker than facts. Within hours, I was getting calls. "Hey, is it true your fence is lethal?" one neighbor asked nervously. She says it's high voltage. Another whispered. I sighed. It's the same voltage farmers use to keep raccoons out of gardens. Unless Karen is secretly a cow, she'll survive. Some laughed. Some didn't. And just like that, the neighborhood was split. Half rolling their eyes at her, half wondering if I was some kind of suburban supervillain. But Karen didn't stop with emails. 2 days later, I came home to find a bright orange violation notice taped to my mailbox. Notice of code violation. Unapproved electrical installation pending review. Stamped with the city logo. At first, my stomach dropped. Then I looked closer. The font was wrong. The signature shaky. The whole thing was a cheap fake. I called the city office. The clerk actually laughed. Whoever made this didn't even use the right letterhead. Guess who? That's when I realized I couldn't just play defense anymore. I had to outsmart her, so I got creative. I installed a hidden weatherproof camera inside my mailbox. I set up a decoy electrical box on the fence, a fake conduit cover with a blinking LED, and a tiny motion alarm inside. If Karen came back to tamper again, she'd trip the alarm and be caught red-handed on camera. And sure enough, a few nights later, just before midnight, my phone buzzed. Motion detected. I opened the live feed, and there she was, Karen, dressed in her robe and slippers, flashlight in one hand, pliers in the other, muttering under her breath like she was carrying out a holy mission. She knelt by the decoy box, squinting. Then she reached out and snipped the fake wire. The LED inside flashed red. The alarm chirped sharp and loud. Karen screamed, stumbled backward, and fell straight into my flower bed. I stepped outside, trying not to laugh. "Evening, Karen," I said calmly. "Doing some late-night gardening." She scrambled up, hair full of mulch, robe streaked with dirt. Her face twisted in fury. "You rigged this to scare me. This is harassment." I shook my head. "No, Karen, that's a motion alarm on my property. You set it off by trespassing again. You're provoking me. You're trying to make me look crazy." I chuckled. "Karen, you're doing that all by yourself." Her hand trembled as she pointed at me. "This neighborhood doesn't need your paranoia and your ugly fence." "Then move," I said simply. Her mouth opened, but no words came. Just the sound of heavy, angry breathing. Then she spun around and stormed off, flashlight beam jerking wildly. 5 minutes later, my inbox dinged again. A new email blast. This time titled, "Formal Complaint Against. Homeowner. Hostile Conduct." She accused me of verbal intimidation, psychological traps, and maintaining weaponized systems. At 12:47 in the morning, Phil, one of the board members, replied within minutes. "Karen, please refrain from sending official HOA correspondence after midnight." That single line said everything. Even the board was starting to lose patience. But me, I knew better. Karen wasn't slowing down, she was just changing tactics. And what she tried next shocked even me. By this point, I thought I'd seen it all. Fake notices, midnight sabotage, emails at ungodly hours. Karen had pulled every trick from the HOA handbook of insanity. But I was wrong. She was just getting started. And the next move she made? It almost destroyed everything. It began on a quiet Monday morning. I was sipping coffee when I heard the rumble of heavy machinery outside. At first, I thought it was a delivery truck, but when I looked out the window, my stomach flipped. A backhoe, parked right in front of my fence. 2 men in orange vests hopped out, unspooling cables and carrying bolt cutters. And who stood beside them, arms folded, sunglasses on like a mob boss in a gardening hat? Karen, I stormed outside. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" She smiled sweetly. "Good morning. The HOA has voted to remove your non-compliant fence. These contractors are here under my authority." "You don't have authority," I snapped. "You were suspended." Her smile didn't fade. "The vote hasn't been ratified. Until then, I'm acting in an emergency capacity for community safety." One of the workers looked uneasy. Ma'am, this is private property, right?" Karen snapped her head toward him. "It's common border maintenance. Proceed." The man hesitated, but before he could move, another vehicle rolled up. White and blue. Sheriff's cruiser. Deputy Collins stepped out, hand on his belt. "Morning, folks. Got a call about unauthorized contractors and property damage." Karen's face drained of color. "This is HOA business." Collins shook his head. "Ma'am, the DA already notified us of your trespassing charges. You shouldn't be near this property." The contractors backed away instantly. "We're done here," one muttered, packing up their tools. Karen trembled with rage. "You can't do this." "He electrocuted me." "He's dangerous." Collins raised an eyebrow. "Then maybe you should stop cutting wires, ma'am." That should have been the end, but humiliation only made her spiral deeper. 2 nights later, around 2 a.m., my alarm system went off. Not the motion detector. This time it was the main gate. I bolted upright, grabbed my phone, and pulled up the feed. What I saw chilled me. Karen. But she wasn't alone. 2 men stood beside her, faces half covered, one with a crowbar, the other lugging a toolbox. These weren't neighbors. They were hired help, and judging by the way they moved, fast, confident. They weren't here for inspection. They were here to destroy. Through the cameras, I watched them pry at the bolts on the gate, sparks flying as metal scraped metal. Karen hovered behind them, pointing like a commander, clipboard pressed to her chest like some holy relic. I called 911 instantly, whispering the address. The operator told me to stay inside. Officers were on the way. But then chaos erupted. One of the men yanked the wrong cable. A live wire sparked, leaping to Karen's clipboard. There was a sharp pop, a flash that lit up the yard like lightning. Karen shrieked, collapsing onto the wet grass. The men panicked, dropping tools and bolting for their truck. Tires screeched as they peeled out of the neighborhood, leaving her crumpled by the fence. I ran outside, heart pounding. She was still breathing, ragged, shallow. Her hands trembled as she clutched the scorched clipboard. "Karen, don't move," I said, kneeling beside her. "Help's coming." Her eyes fluttered open, glassy and wild. "You think you're better than me," she whispered, voice cracked. "But you're just like me, controlling, always watching." I had no words. The sirens arrived before I could answer, blue lights washing over the street. Deputy Collins and the EMTs rushed in. "She's alive," Collins said, checking her pulse. "But she's in bad shape." They loaded her into the ambulance. For once, she didn't yell, didn't argue. She just stared blankly at the night sky, rain starting to fall against her face. By morning, the whole neighborhood knew. HOA president injured in late-night incident, the news alerts read. The board held an emergency session that afternoon. For the first time, they didn't just suspend her. They dissolved the entire HOA. Phil, the interim chair, called me personally. "It's over," he said. "No more dues. No more meetings." She took it too far. Everyone's had enough. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But deep down, I knew. Karen wasn't finished yet. Because people like her don't just burn out. They smolder, and when they flare back up, it's always worse. You'd think that after being hauled off in an ambulance, burned and humiliated in front of the entire neighborhood, Karen would finally disappear from my life. But Karen, she wasn't the disappearing type. She was the kind who clung like smoke after a fire. The very next day, my phone buzzed nonstop. Neighbors whispered in driveways, peered out from curtains, and clustered in little gossip groups like witnesses after a car crash. Some cheered. She finally got what she deserved. Others worried. "Do you think she'll come after us next?" Even the mailman grinned as he slid envelopes into my box. "Heard you finally got her," he said. "You're a local hero," I laughed. Let's hope heroes don't get subpoenaed. Because I knew better. This wasn't over yet. Sure enough, a few days later, a lawyer showed up at my door. Mid-50s, sharp suit, briefcase in hand, the kind of guy who's paid to stay calm no matter how insane the story is. "Good afternoon," he said with a polite smile. "I represent Ms. H., your neighbor. She'd like to resolve this matter civilly." I almost laughed in his face. Civilly? She trespassed, cut wires, faked documents, hired men to destroy my gate, and nearly electrocuted herself. That's not a misunderstanding, that's crime. He didn't flinch. She maintains she acted in the interest of community safety. She's prepared to offer a settlement for damages if you agree not to pursue charges. I shook my head. Tell Karen the only thing I want is peace, and she can give me that by leaving me, my property, and this neighborhood alone. He sighed, scribbled in his notes, and left. For a moment, I thought that might finally close the book. But then, the whispers started again. A post popped up in the local Facebook group from Concerned Resident 123. He's turning our peaceful community into a war zone. Be careful who you support. The comments lit up instantly. Some defended me. Others accused me of being a paranoid vigilante with a shock fence. Guess who Concerned Resident 23 really was? Karen hadn't come back in person. She was hiding behind screens now, weaponizing gossip. I didn't argue. I didn't rant. I just posted receipts, sheriff's report numbers, time-stamped photos, board minutes showing her suspension. Silence. Her defenders vanished like smoke. For the first time in months, I thought maybe it was really over, and then came the knock. Friday night, just after sunset, Phil, the board member, stood at my door holding a thick folder. His expression was grim. Karen filed an appeal, he said, and she's naming you personally. Inside were 26 pages of rambling accusations. She claimed I'd weaponized electrical systems, stalked her, and orchestrated a campaign of intimidation. She'd even circled warning signs on my fence with red ink, labeling them threat symbols. I stared at Phil. You've got to be kidding. He shook his head. We're legally required to review it. But don't worry, it's nonsense. Still, Karen doesn't lose. She combusts. He wasn't wrong. The following week, the board met one last time. Karen even showed up, pearls and pink sweater, sitting in the front row like a dethroned queen plotting her return. But when the votes came in, it was final. Her appeal rejected. Her removal permanent. No more HOA. Phil adjourned the meeting with a sigh of relief. But as Karen walked past me on her way out, she leaned close, her voice a whisper. You think you've won, but you don't know what you've started. Then she left. No yelling, no clipboard. Just that eerie calm that only comes before something worse. For weeks, the neighborhood was quiet. Her blinds stayed drawn, her golf cart unmoved. Then, one morning, a moving truck appeared in her driveway. Boxes, furniture, curtains pulled down. By the next day, she was gone. No goodbye. No final email blast. Just an empty house with a for sale sign in the yard. That night, I stood by my fence and looked across the patch of grass where all of this had started. The wind brushed the trees. The lake shimmered under the moonlight. For the first time in months, the air didn't feel charged. I ran my hand along the cool metal of the fence, listening to the faint hum of the solar wire. It wasn't about electricity. It never had been. It was about control. Karen couldn't stand losing it. And in the end, it destroyed her. Sometimes, I still think about her, her face when the spark hit that clipboard, the way she whispered, "You're just like me." But she was wrong. I wasn't like her, because I never wanted power. I just wanted peace, and when I finally got it, I realized something important. You can't force people to follow your current. Eventually, it finds its own path.